Tennille here, and welcome to the Profitable Dog Trainer. So today I wanted to do something a little bit different and tell you my story about how I became a dog trainer and then how I turned that into a profitable business and a flexible business. Basically, I created the business to suit my lifestyle, so I wanted to tell you a little bit about that and how you can do the same. So I also want to tell you about why I decided to become a dog trainer. So some of you may relate to this. Let's go back to the beginning and where it all started. So from when I was a little kid, I loved animals, any kind of animals. I just always wanted to be around animals, and if there was any animals in the vicinity, that's where you would find me. And then as I grew up, that always stayed the same. If I was at a party, I would be sitting with the dog or trying to make friends with the cat. If we went to the zoo, I was just so fascinated and just could watch the animals all day. And all of my childhood toys that I would play with would all be animal based. I was never into dolls and babies, and I'm still not. And I just always was into animals, everything animals. And so when adults would ask me, what do you want to do when you grow up? I would just say, I want to work with animals. And of course, the adults would then always reply with, oh, so you want to be a vet? That was just the one main thing that people could think of when working with animals was brought up. And then they would immediately tell me how difficult it is to become a vet. But I didn't really want to be a vet. I was sort of like, oh no, that would be a bit sad. I don't think that's what I want. I at some point did want to work with wildlife, and I did some wildlife care on a volunteer basis. I thought maybe working in zoos or something like that, but I wasn't sure exactly what. I just knew I wanted to make a living with animals. But life happened. So when I grew up and got to the point of leaving high school and everyone asking me, what are you doing? What job are you going to get, or what are you going to study? I still didn't really know how to work with animals. I knew it's what I wanted, but I didn't know what the path would be to get there. And while I was trying to figure that out, I was like, well, you've got to enter the workforce. So I got a traineeship in business administration, working in an office job for the local council, local government job. And at that point, everyone was telling me how valuable that was, because it's such a valuable, privileged thing to be able to work for any government department. You get good conditions, you get some of them do it a day off once every 2 weeks and things like that. So it was very now that you've got this, hold on to it and make the most of it, and you should be so lucky. So I did the traineeship, I got my certificate in that, and then I got a job there, and I stayed on as a permanent full-time office employee. And it was okay at first. I was just like, yep, this will do. And I just thought one day I will change careers and figure out what I want to do, and I'll work with animals. But I still couldn't figure out exactly how that would look like. And this temporary office job, I ended up working in various office jobs for 8 years, and I got more and more miserable. There was some toxic work environments. I just really hated my job, and I didn't go so well being employable, and by that I mean working for other people as well. So I was struggling, and at the 8-year mark is when I got to the point where I was like, something's got to give, because I'm really unhappy and I'm not doing what I always knew I wanted to do. So it's time to take it serious and really look for what changes I can make and how I can make something close to my dreams happen. So I started thinking about, okay, what kind of field can I get into to work with animals? And I remembered that when I was at a markets once, there was a market stall, and this is when I was in high school, and at this market stall, the woman there was a dog trainer. She had a little dog with her, and I thought that was fascinating, and I remembered her. And I'd always sort of assumed, well, she must just do that on the side, run some classes as a hobby, that's not a real job. And back then it was very different to now as well. We're talking 13, 14 years ago, And before that, when I saw her at the markets, would have been like, it's scary to say, but over 20 years ago. And dog training has come a long way. There's so much more opportunity now to make it a career. But back then, like, it's still a fairly new industry, right? So back then it was very like unusual to meet someone that was a dog trainer. And when I brought that up, people would automatically say, oh, that would be very hard to get into. There wouldn't be much money in that. Like, you could maybe just do it on the side. You couldn't really make a living from it. So if you've ever heard anything like that, I can empathize with that. But I thought back to this dog trainer that I had met at the markets, and I started looking into it and looking on the internet, and lo and behold, you can make this a legitimate career. And some of the things I read talked about the difference between working for someone else and running your own business. Now, I already knew I wanted to run my own business because I always wanted to work for myself as well. So I found the dog training certification that I wanted to do, and I enrolled. And at the time, that was very scary for me because I had never really gone out on my own and traveled on my own. Like, you had to go and travel to do the practical components, and I was terrified. But I did it, and it, as you would know, that really helped me to grow and develop as a person, and of course in my career. So as soon as I got my qualification in dog training, I had also along the way while I was studying, or just before, just before I had signed up to study, I got my Border Collie Chester and really got into training with him. And I started out just learning online of how to train, YouTube videos, and doing any sort of training that I could with him, teaching him all sorts of tricks. And being a Border Collie, of course, he really loved that. And I was just loving it, and I was like, I think I found what I want to do. Did the certification, and then as soon as I was certified, I was starting my business. Before the course even ended, I was coming up with ideas and just sort of noting everything down, planning it out, and how it was going to be. But even though I knew I wanted to run a business and I was excited to leap into that, I had no idea how to actually run a business and how to run a dog training business with the clients and interact with them and teach them in the most effective way and run the financial side of things. And I was still in a very small mindset of believing what I had been told, that this was never going to be a lucrative career. This was always going to be something that you did it out of a passion, of course, but don't expect to make much money from it. People would say very commonly, even within the industry, we don't get into dog training for the money. And there's still people in the industry that say that and believe it today. And that's why I do what I do now. But that's jumping ahead a bit. So when I started the business, I was fairly confident with working with the dogs for basic obedience and basic behavior issues. And I got my first clients and they paid me $50. And for that, I gave them everything I could. I threw everything I knew at it, and sort of unlimited time in the session, and just really over-delivered. And I thought, you know, it would be a good goal to maybe get 1 or 2 clients a week around here, because I also live in a fairly small town area. And so that was another limiting belief that I had and was told, and that a lot of people around here have, is no one will pay for that, or they won't pay much for that. And a lot of people that I talk to now are told the same thing. And one of the biggest objections I get to why people can't make their dream business in dog training is people won't pay that in my area, or the type of people in my area aren't the type of people to sign up for dog training. So in all different areas that people live, so many people say that, and it is a limiting belief. But when I started out, I believed that sort of thing at the time too. And so that was a belief that I had to change in order to change the outcome. Now, I wasn't able to just quit my job and jump straight into my dog training business, because I was only getting the odd client here and there for very little pay. This was not going to pay the bills, and like any adult, I had bills and responsibilities that I needed to fulfill. So at the start, I was starting the dog training business on the side, and then as soon as I could, I found a part-time job, which took some time. There wasn't many around. I got a part-time job, and half the week I would be at the job and half the week I would be running my business. And that allowed me to put a bit more time into it, and word started to spread and I got busier, which was really great. And then I started to get so busy but still making little pay, and I was at this crossroads where I was like, I'm going to need to quit my other job, which is very scary. I'm going to lose that security, and go into the dog training business full time to be able to put more time and energy into growing it. So at this point I figured that I would have to work full-time hours, at least 5 or 6 days a week, night classes, weekends, back-to-back dog training clients, one after the other. And there's no way that that would be sustainable for me and for a lot of people. Energy-wise, that would be a very fast track to burnout. And I sort of realized that, but I also didn't quite know how I would be able to make a full-time income otherwise out of dog training. It felt like a stretch to have to try and get enough clients to fill my calendar all of the time. Like I would be chasing clients, always on the edge and always worried about where the next job was coming from. So it would be very stressful. So again, I felt a little bit stuck with needing to keep my job and keep the business small. I was also getting a few difficult clients, people not listening and following through, people not doing their homework with their dogs, which leads to mediocre results. And then I would have people that were sort of bossing me around and taking the lead in the relationship and directing how I should run my business, as in like negotiating with my rates and dictating my schedule, being quite demanding of my downtime outside of work hours. Problems like that we all encounter at one point or another. And I started to feel like I was getting burnt out. And at this point I thought maybe, because I was still thinking small, that dog training is a side thing. And I thought maybe I can look into another type of career that I can do for myself. And that's when I got into learning about internet marketing. And I quite enjoyed that, and I thought there's good possibility here. And then I put the pieces together and I thought, I can apply this to my dog training business and that could work really well. I was also learning about like business structures and strategies. And so I did a complete overhaul of my business. I attracted ideal clients with marketing techniques that can draw in ideal clients and the type of people that you want to work with. I completely changed my fee schedule and my rates and my marketing. And I was very quickly from that point able to leave my part-time job and do dog training full-time, but not hectic full-time hours. And to this day, I see dog training clients 3 days a week maximum. I don't do late hours and I don't do weekends. And I see a maximum of 3 clients in one day, because it is quite draining for me working with people, and it is for a lot of people. And I want to deliver quality work. So at one point back then I was also running group classes, but eventually I decided to just focus on private lessons. And then a bit later after that I got into doing online courses, and that's another story. But I had my full-time, part-time dog training business, and I was making more money than I'd ever made in any of my full-time office jobs that I hated. Something that only a short time before I really thought would not be possible. And not long after that I had my first 6-figure year, and the rest is history. And then it just evolved that other trainers that I networked with would ask me for business advice, and I found that I really loved helping them, because people would come back to me and say, I just had a $5,000 day thanks to what you told me the other day, or I have just reached my first $10,000 month. And that just makes me so excited, especially when someone has been thinking small or just not having the self-belief or confidence of what is possible in a dog training business. And so they're undercharging, over-delivering, burning out, putting up with difficult clients, and it's not quite working out how they envisioned that their own dog training business would be. And then we make these tweaks and they come back to me and they're excited again and they're making more money, which frees up more of their time. They're able to preserve their energy, deliver a better outcome, only work with clients that they love, and just the benefits go on. So in a nutshell, that's how I ended up doing what I do. I still train dogs at the moment, and I run the Profitable Dog Trainer that you're watching right now. And I help other dog trainers all over the world to get to their first or second 6 figures doing something that they love in dog training, but without burning out, so they can keep that passion alive. So if you want to get your hands on any of the resources that can help you to do just that, head on over to the website. I'll put the link below or on the screen. That's dogmatterspro.com. And there's all sorts of resources, and if you're a really keen bean and you want to go all out, make sure that you come and join the masterclass, which is our community of like-minded trainers who are all supportive of each other to grow successful businesses, however success looks like to them. Thanks for being here today, and thanks for hearing my story. And if it resonated with you, I'd love to hear more about your story in the comments. And I'll see you in the next video.